Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are going to be using a little sneak peek from the upcoming release. This is Rise and Grind. I am also going to be using some pattern paper from one of the new packs. And we're going to be doing like a little scene card. If you've been to my channel before, you're not surprised by this because I love to make a scene in card making, of course. So these are red rubber stamps. If you are new to card making, to coloring, to stamping, these types of stamps, they aren't always red rubber, but it is this style of stamp can be an enormous asset to you when you are first starting out. So first things first, we are stamping in our Intense Black ink from Honeybee. This is a alcohol marker safe ink. I'm going to be using Copic markers today, but you can use whatever alcohol markers you have or colored pencils, whatever your preferred color medium is, because the rules for the coloring apply no matter which medium you're using. I like mine to have a bold black outline, so I typically do stamp mine twice. Thank the Lord for stamp positioners. So I'm going to stamp that down twice, and then we're going to get right into the coloring. So when I'm talking about this style, what I mean is, do you see all those wonderful little added bonus lines that give each one of these images really great character? So that is easier to do with red rubber stamps because you can get an immense amount of detail in a red rubber stamp. But basically, you're looking for any kind of stamp where it's more of a illustrative style, and the illustrator, meaning the person who drew it, gives you an indication of where the shadows should be. So here we have this little bag. I envision it being kind of like a burlap sack kind of situation. I don't even know if that's how coffee beans come or not, but that's how I envision it in my head. And so I chose the browns to color that. And then when I'm putting down my shading, I do start with my darkest color. If you are scared of starting with darker colors, you're in good company. I was scared of starting with my darkest color for years. You can start with your lightest color and put in your shadows, and then you would work from your lightest color to your darkest color to your lightest. I colored like that for years, and a lot of my older videos are in that same style. I'm much more comfortable with shading now, and in part because of stamps like this, and lots of practice. But if you start with a good image to practice on, it helps you to develop that muscle memory and learn, okay, well, where are they putting the shadows? Okay, they're putting the shadows where one object is meeting another. So where this cloth is kind of like folded down, it's the top is meeting the middle, there's shadows there. And then where one object lays on top of another, there's typically shadows as well. So just by following these lines and putting in the shadows with your darkest color, if you then go in with your next midtone, and cover up that darker color and extend it out slightly, you can do that all the way through to your lightest color. Now here, I was very reserved with my darkest color to begin with, which is totally fine because you can always go back and add multiple layers. So once I saw how I colored it the first time and I was like, okay, this is a little lighter than I anticipated, I was able to go back in with my two midtones, which typically when you're coloring, that's what you're going to see the most of, your dark midtone and your light midtone if you're using a series of 4. In this case, coloring the coffee beans, I'm using a series of 3. So I'm coloring the darkest parts with my darkest color, and that is going to be the parts that are like deep down in the nooks and crannies. That's going to be the most shaded areas. Then this midtone is what we're going to see the most of. So I'm spending a lot of time adding in this midtone, and anything that I am leaving white is going to be my highlight for my lightest color. So even though we've only used 3 colors instead of 4, and all of these little coffee beans are piled on top of each other, you can see when we're done coloring that there is still separation. in order to have that separation and not have our coffee beans look just like a big blob, we have to have a highlight and a shadow. So now I want to do my little sugar cubes. And by the way, is this not the cutest little sugar cube container you ever saw? Adorable. But I know that I'm going to color the lid, my little creamer pourer. What do we call that? I don't even know. My little milk pourer and my percolator. I know I'm going to color that like it's stainless steel. So I chose a warm gray for my sugar cubes, and I'm also going to use it for my milk so that there is a separation between the two. Anytime we're coloring something white, we do want to make sure we're leaving white in that area. But again, if you look at how these are drawn, they're drawn in 3D, but the side has lots of little dots on there, which indicates to us that it should be shaded. Just like the front of it has little lines along like kind of the top or the bottom to indicate where it would have some shading. So I know it looks gray right now. Stay with me. I know it's scary. Coloring things white is different. But stay with me because once we get everything pulled together and all the other colors added, it will look white, I promise. For the coffee, typically when they're that little heart design, which is so stinking cute, is done with the, like when they're adding like the frothed milk. So I colored the outside a coffee color. And then I went in with just a warm gray. I went with a 3, and I did every other line that warm gray. So now I can go back in with my lightest color of coffee and color that in. We're going to bolster this up a little bit with some white gel pen, but I wanted to indicate that, you know, the heart was there. You could absolutely just color all the way over it if it wasn't something you wanted to highlight, and that would be fine. Now we're coming in, we're doing those stainless steel. For that, I chose cool grays. And again, I am looking at where those lines are. I am also applying the 2 rules that I know. Where one object meets another, shadows. Where one object lays on top of the other, shadows. And the other thing with coloring something like stainless steel, you do want to leave just a little bit of white as your highlight. If you find it very challenging to do so, you can add it back in with a white gel pen, but that helps it to look shiny. So here we have very dark areas. The reason those areas are so dark is because they're actually seated inside the jar. So that is going to be a darker gray than the top of the sugar container because that's on the outside. And then the same thing with the milk. I'm looking, there's shadows on the left and right hand side, but they don't actually go all the way out to the edge. So I am leaving that little bit of a lip, and what that's called is reflective light. So it's already telling me like, hey, you don't need to go all the way to the edge here. You can leave this little border. Well, that's teaching me now as I'm doing my coloring, okay, leaving that little bit of border creates some separation in my coloring. So now maybe when I move on to color other things, maybe I'm going to color a plain coffee cup that doesn't have any of these illustrative shading notations. Then I'll think to myself, oh, when I colored that, little mug or little cup before, the illustrator told me to leave a little edge that was a little bit lighter. So maybe I'll do that this time. So all of these things are kind of building up that muscle memory and giving you lots of practice, but it's helping you to learn where shading would go so that when you're moving on to other images that maybe have less guidance, you're more confident because you've colored images like this. Now, like I said, they don't always have to be red rubber. You can use other ones. I have another video with a similar style. I'll link that to the end on my channel so that you can check that out. But now, like we've moved on to this kind of like vintage percolator. I'm sure these probably came in other colors, but for some reason, like that's just how I saw it in my head, was as a stainless steel. I just did. Does anybody know? Do they come in other do they come in other colors? So now, again, I'm going in with my darkest color. I'm finding those shading lines. Now, here's something that you'll probably notice that I'm doing that's a little bit different on this one. So instead of using my darkest color for all of the lines, on this one, the lines seem to be on the left-hand side. So there are some areas where the line is also on the right. I am choosing not to color all of those little lines on the right. with my darkest color. I am doing this top one with my dark mid-tone, so that way there's a little bit of a different feeling between the two. So the top is a little bit lighter, the bottom is a little bit darker. There isn't a right or a wrong way to do that. Like, you could absolutely do it with your darkest color. This was just something that kind of felt right to me to make the bottom a little bit darker. I think maybe because it was like the top is bigger. You know, it has like the spout on it and the handle. And so I felt like that should maybe be a little bit lighter. But you can still stick with the same rules. That's not something that you have to do. That was just kind of like a personal design choice on my part. So, and then if you want a really, really strong highlight, like here you can see, you know, leaving that white area, for the lightest color is really giving off very strong highlights. That's something that you can do as well. If you know, you really want a very strong highlight, you would leave a large expanse there, bright white. It looks weird when you're doing it, but when you pull back and look at it in its entirety, it does make sense. So now, I looked at all the different papers in the paper pad, and there's so many that are like super pretty. But for design, because I already had so much going on, I wanted something that wasn't going to be as busy. Not to mention, I am a person who prefers a more tone on tone or a more subtle pattern. Typically, I am not a big, like, a lot of pattern in your face, or what we call like a busier style of card. This is me checking. Did you see me just check my number? Yeah, it's because I had to go refill my marker. It's getting to the seasons where I'm using my navies a little bit more often. So I was like, oh, I really love, blue is my boyfriend. You guys know that. I really love blue. So I'll color my little coffee cup blue, and then that will match the glass that we're going to color here momentarily with the sugar cubes, and that'll be good. And then I'll pick up a wallpaper for the background. Well, I did struggle a little bit because of my own color choices. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Here, I just wanted to point out, because we are talking about, you know, if you're just starting out in your coloring journey, did you see how I just went right out of the lines? It happens. It's totally okay. That's what we have a colorless blender for. So here, again, we're coloring this glass. It is clear, but I do want there to be some indication of like color to the jar. So I'm using the same blues. I'm just going out. I'm going to go out a little bit further in the lighter side. So instead of using like the B95s and the 97s, I'm going to use a B91 and a 93. And again, I'm following those lines that are down there. There is indication that, you know, the shadow would be, again, inset. So we have that reflective light, and that it would be kind of around these edges. If you go out of the lines, which is what you see me, like what I pointed out before, you can go in with your colorless blender and just, you're going to like push the ink back towards where it needs to go. And you want to give it a second to dry in between, in case if you want to go back in for a second time. If you do not give it that second to dry in between, you just end up putting down more colorless blender, and it starts to get uncontrollable and it bleeds out. The other thing you can use a colorless blender for is here. Like, I got a little heavy-handed with my blues. I'm just going to go back in there and kind of, I don't want to say erase, but lighten up some of those areas. So if you're coloring something, you know, anything really that you feel like you got a little heavy-handed with your darks, you can always go back in with your colorless blender, or even the lightest color of whatever combination you're using, and see if you can lighten it up some. So now I am using the coordinating dies to go ahead and cut these out so that we can start building our card. Here, do you see this? Normally I do not leave this part in, but can you see how much of my desk you can see? If you are somebody who has followed me for a long time, you know that I never show my die cutting because like my camera is right up on it. Here is why. My whole card making career, I have had a camera that has been on a stand. So it's been on a stand that has hung right over. When I first started, you guys know me, I'm cheap, and I didn't have a lot of money to invest in it. I had a PVC pipe holder for a really long time. And then eventually I upgraded to a metal stand holder. But nonetheless, my camera was always right there. An embarrassingly long time. I have had a ceiling mount, but have not had it hung. Mostly, honestly, because my husband really couldn't get in here because my craft room was kind of a mess. But anyway, this past weekend, my fantastic husband hung my camera. There are some issues that I'm getting used to, and we're finding workarounds for, but I am so excited because now there is nothing. My desk is like so completely open. It's fantastic. So if you're thinking about getting a ceiling mount, don't delay. Do it. It's really great. It's really, really great. So there I committed to one. I was like, okay, I'm going to go with it. And I'm just going to tell y'all, I changed my mind again because I can't be held accountable. I am who I am. I don't know why I try to fight against the tide to make it a little less busy or a little more busy or whatever. I don't know why I just don't go with what I like, because the reality of the situation is I'm a person who's not going to like a lot of stuff going on in the background. I'm a tone on tone girly. I'm a plain color girly. I'm a lot of shimmer and a lot of shine. It is who I am. It's fine. So here, I just want to be clear, the sentiments do have dies, but I specifically chose not to use them. So I stamp my sentiment, may your day be as strong as your coffee, which I think is a great little encouragement. And then I'm going straight circa 1998 here. I'm going to put mats on mats on mats, mats everywhere, because I want it to read as like a little sign. So I trimmed it into a white little label, and now I am adhering it to some navy cardstock, and I'm going to trim it with my Fiskars trimmer because this has a wire guide in it, so I can see exactly where I'm going to cut, and I don't have to measure. Praise Jesus, hallelujah. My math is not mathin'. And then I'm going to give this like an 1/8 of an inch. Is it? No, it's like a 16th. It's a very little border. And then I'm going to put that on some brown cardstock, glue that down. You want to make sure it's even, like in a corner, and then you only have to trim 2 sides. Like, yay, lazy crafting. So then here, I did give myself a little bit more room. So it's not 1/4 of an inch, but it's not an 1/8 of an inch. It's somewhere in between. Anyway, the brown's wider than the blue. That's what I'm going to say. So I also chose this brown pattern paper for my counter at the bottom. It is, I don't know how to describe this. It has a texture to it. And like darker parts and darker parts and lighter parts, and so I liked that it was adding a little bit of texture to the bottom counter here, because I changed my mind. And it's fine. My blues were not matching. Like, my background is like a stonewash blue, and these blues were like a brighter blue. So in order to knock it back a little, I need to make it a more purpley blue. So I'm going to go over top of it with a blue violet, and that is going to help kind of knock it back to match the background a little bit better. So this one right here, because everything's really like nice and light, is a BV00, I think. And then the one that I went over the coffee cup with was a BV04 and a BV02. But nonetheless, if you find yourself in the same situation, I call it color glazing. Just find a color that you are like, hey, I like this blue, but this blue is not as purple as my background. Then find yourself a blue violet or a light purple and go over top of it and see. You can always test it out first on the scrap piece of paper to see what color you're going to get before you commit to taking it to your final project. But at this stage in the game, I am not recoloring it. So color glazing it is. Now here we have put down the pattern in the background, we have put down our countertop, and now we're going to start building out our elements. I'm going to put my little percolator, he is the tallest, so I'm going to put him in the back. And then I like to work with odd numbers, whether it's 3 or in this case 5. because when you work in pairs, your brain wants to or when you work in evens, your brain wants to pair them. That was a better way to say that. So like here, you could leave this right here with the sugar and the coffee and the percolator, and that would be fine. You like all three of those elements together would be perfectly fine together. Then I like to blend in my my edges. So that is what I am doing here. And I can do that very easily with the percolator because I colored it. So I know exactly what colors I need to lay down. If the white edges don't bother you, then don't worry about it. I like when my scenes kind of blend into each other seamlessly. I'm also going in with my browns and adding a little bit of shadow underneath my elements to help ground them so they don't look like they're, floating above my countertop. I am going to blend my white die cuts into this particular background, but I'm going to be honest with you, if I had stuck with the other one that was a little bit busier, I probably would not have wasted my time because there was so much going on, you wouldn't have been able to see it anyway. The other thing with color glazing is that you don't really, sometimes you don't always have the perfect color. And so I went over it first with a cool gray, which wasn't exactly perfect. But then once I went over it with that blue violet, it did blend much better into the background. Obviously, I'm not recreating the pattern, so it's not perfection, but you get what I'm saying. It's better than what it was. It's better than white. So then now once I have that back layer done, I am going to move to the front layer and blend those in. And then 1998, it was getting me. I love a framed in look. I can't help it. So I trimmed that off, and I trimmed off about a quarter of my situation because I had the room on that side to do it. And then I'm just going to take my shears and trim off the other side of the sugar bowl. So it looks like the scene is going to continue on. And then I trimmed off from the top. And now I can put my little sign there and it'll have a nice little white border on my card base. Everybody doesn't love frames. I do love frames. Do what makes your heart happy. Whatever makes you happy. But I just like the way that it frames it in. And I feel like this is something like if you have like a little coffee bar area in your house, like some people decorate, not me, because, well, I'm not really good at that, and nor do I have time. But some people do. And if you are one of those people who do, I'm jealous, but also this is like maybe something you could put in your little coffee bar area, maybe in like a little frame, or you could just stack your little card up, just open it up. It would be cute. Of course, I added some shimmer because I cannot help myself, especially to the things that were going to be metallic, and my cup. Pretty much everything. I think I added shimmer to pretty much everything. And then I'm going to switch over to my white gel pen. So I am going to add those highlights to the metallic. You'll see a much better view like once we zoom in at the end. But I'm looking for those areas that I can add, like where those highlights would be. And then I also did some stippling onto my little sugar cubes to help give them a little bit more texture. I went in, I told you before, I went into that little heart to help it appear to be a bit more white, and added some little lines in there. And the coffee beans, of course. So this one was actually surprisingly fast, but this one was really fun because it allowed me to like sit and color. And you guys know that I love the coffee. I drink the coffee all day. So it allowed me to just sit and color and have fun and create a little scene card. So this release is on September 24th. That's when the products will be released. So I hope that you will join me for the release party on the Honeybee channel that Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I always appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.